Hello, it's Saturday. So clearly I've not found a time to record a song, so I come to you as my punishment in this accent, which is the least embarrassing accent I can manage. This is much more posh than I usually like, but I'm a bit out of practice with all of my accents, and I haven't even really been watching much British telly, so laugh away. Since I've got this accent, or some slowly morphing version of it, for the duration of this video, I thought I would nerd out a bit and talk to you about accents. Accents are fascinating for many reasons. A, we can understand each other. B, we can recognize that people have different accents from us. And C, we can actually sometimes tell exactly where a person is from, just simply based on their accent. What amazes me even more about them is that we place value judgments on them, these arbitrary developments of geographical separation and class distinction and even sometimes occupation. This is particularly interesting in the UK. It amazes me that a country smaller than most of the states in the US has such an astounding number of distinct accents, and even more amazing is that people all over the country know every one of them and the reputation that goes with it. I read a newspaper article while I was in London last summer about a news presenter who was from Manchester, I think, and she got hate mail from her viewers telling her that she could never be a news presenter with an accent like that, and that she sounded too working class with that accent. It's similar in the US, but less extreme and much more racial than class-based. If I talk like this, people assume that I'm a stupid redneck. But if I talk like this, people are immediately fascinated. Americans think that anyone with a British accent is posh and super smart, regardless of what kind of accent it is. You could be the cockneyest of the cockneys and people would actually think you were royalty. The thing is, nobody's accent is objectively better than anyone else's. It's all a social construct. Every country has a standard. France has an entire association dedicated to maintaining a standard version of French. But standards change over time. Consider any film with Cary Grant or Katharine Hepburn and think about the way they talk. That was the standard just 50, 60 years ago. Back then, people got their ideas of what the standard accent was considered to be from the cinema. Now, people get their ideas of what's standard from news presenters. I'm lucky to have grown up with a largely standard accent for an American because people train for years to get rid of their so-called inferior accents. Something else I noticed while I was in London, though, was that anytime I went into a restaurant or a shop and the people who worked there heard that I had an American accent, they immediately assumed that I knew nothing about the United Kingdom and were extremely patronizing toward me. It was very, very frustrating because I actually know quite a lot about the United Kingdom, but solely based on my accent, people made a lot of assumptions about me. As someone without a specific regional dialect, it was a very revealing experience for me to see what it's like for people who don't speak a standard dialect and what they experience all the time, especially in the United Kingdom. And now, a little linguistics. Accents that pronounce R's, like most American accents, as well as Irish and Scottish accents, are called rhotic, while the accents that don't pronounce R's, like most British accents, as well as Boston and some New York accents, are called non-rhotic. And now, a little history to go with the linguistics. Towards the beginning of the 17th century, people began emigrating from England to what would of course become the United States. They settled along the East Coast, and they farmed, and they built stuff, and they killed off indigenous peoples, and all of those things that they don't actually really teach you about in school. What did those people sound like? Good question. London has always been the cultural centre of England, and that applies even to the accent. Whatever is spoken there is considered the standard. At the time of all of this emigration, and also around the time of Shakespeare, the standard was a rhotic dialect. That's what everyone wanted to emulate, and that's what spread. The people who came to America stuck with that rhotic dialect, and eventually it began developing into the American accent that we know today, after it had been separate for long enough, and after it mixed with other cultures that came later. Back in England, though, the accent began to change after a lot of the emigration had happened. The R's began to be dropped. It became the non-rhotic accent that we recognise as distinctly British today. My normal American accent is more like Shakespeare, the gold standard of culture and refinement, than the Queen of England, or Stephen Fry, or Posh Spice, or Whoever is the beacon of Englishness. And yet, for some reason, Americans consider British accents to be somehow better. American accents are ugly, the R's are too mushy, the vowels are too nasal. But if you pick apart different American accents, especially on the East Coast, you'll find a British one in there. It's all a social construct, nothing else. Okay, I hope this is educational enough that I'm forgiven for probably going quite a lot over 4 minutes. When I start talking about language, I go a bit overboard because it's just so interesting and weird. What do you all think about accents? Any you particularly like or don't like? How terrible is this one that I've been doing this video? Have you ever been linguistically profiled based on your accent? Deven, congratulations on graduating, and I'll see you on Monday. So long. Pip pip cheerio. No, I know nobody says that. Don't judge me. The pronounce. I've moved on to Scottish. I'm not very good at it. Sometimes I accidentally morph it into something more like, see now it's Irish. A lot of times it morphs into something more like Minnesota, but that's American. Or then it gets into Alaska. I'm not as good at my accents as I used to be. It's kind of a shame really. I've lost the accent I was doing before. Can't seem to distinguish between Scottish and Irish. Keeps going between the two. Jennifer poops at parties.